If you've investigated the idea of roleplay in D&D or any other tabletop role-playing game, you've probably heard the idea of yes and. Most people talk about it in very broad strokes. Things like saying yes to ideas, collaborating, and contributing together. But in spite of it being pitched as the most basic element of improvisation, most discussion consists of philosophical analysis. But generally you don't get a ton of explanation as to how to bridge the gap from philosophy to practice. So that's what I'm going to try to do. The practical use of yes and when it comes to playing a tabletop role-playing game. This specific video is focusing in on player side. What elements are most necessary for you as a player? But keep an eye out for my next one about DM side. I'm going to split up the idea of yes and into two categories. Game yes and character yes and. Starting with game yes and. When the DM says, you all start in the tavern, we're already engaging in the yes part of yes and. When we buy into this and agree, okay, my character's in the tavern. We've listened and we've accepted the reality presented to us. If the DM paints the picture, it's pretty busy, as it always is in the evenings, filled with sailors from the dock, fresh off their shifts, and then asks, Matt, where's your character in the tavern? We now have the chance to do the and part. Fred is sitting at the bar, enjoying a mug of ale next to a flirtatious couple. So and is simple, adding on information that makes sense to what we've said yes to. We were presented with a busy tavern, filled with sailors. We added in a bar, which makes sense for a tavern, as well as a flirtatious couple, who could be sailors or non-sailor patrons. We don't know yet until it's said and made reality. We've also contributed a mug of ale, in which case, though very minute of a detail, establishes that this tavern serves ale and has mugs. This is a very simple case of yes and. Let me show you an example of blocking or denying with the same situation. In essence, being counterproductive with the ideas.
You all start in the tavern. It's pretty busy, as it always is in the evenings, filled with sailors from the dock, fresh off their shifts. Matt, where is your character in the tavern?
The tavern is empty. Fred is the only one sitting there. This would be a pretty major denial. The problem with this is that we are retconning, we're rewinding instead of building, and we're contradicting what the DM is presenting us. Try not to do that. Another example would be, Matt, where's your character in the tavern? They're not. My character is actually in the castle. While less of a denial than the first example, this is still quite the shift. While you can do something like this, it would hurt the moment, because the DM probably counted on everyone being there so we can start the adventure. Let's start the game. Not to say that we can't switch gears like this, ever. There are plenty of games where people are equipped to handle sharp turns like that, but that would be more of an improv focus, possibly performance game for a show. Whereas if this is a normal game, if you didn't plan this with the DM, this might not feel great on their part, if you just immediately put yourself in the castle for the opening moment. Because now that's something they have to deal with and stretch to make work for the game. An important element I want to bring up real quick, especially since we're talking about blocking and denial, is that whenever we play, yes and is not just about roleplay, about playing the reality of the game, but also being able to play with each other as people sitting down playing a game together. But beyond out-of-character interaction, I'm sure you've been chomping at the bit for the roleplay part of yes and, or character yes and. This is where we've got a lot to play with. Say we're at the tavern we established before. My character, Fred, is at the bar, drinking that mug of ale, and the DM starts an interaction. The bartender walks up and places another ale in front of you. Fred says, thanks, quick service around here, which is a form of yes and. We've agreed on the ale being placed, and we're establishing now that Fred ordered a second one, which is why the bartender gave us a second one. And that this sort of behavior is out of the ordinary. Maybe other taverns don't serve you so quickly, or maybe other bartenders don't serve you so quickly. But let me create a little branch off moment here. Something to prevent us from creating a bad habit. A lot of people take yes and too literally, in a sense that they want to say yes and in response to things, or that they don't ever want to say no or be combative. But we can say no. We can be combative. It just depends on how we do it. For example, the bartender walks up and places another ale in front of you. Fred looks confused. He says, I didn't order another drink. This is a different yes and than before. We're taking the negative here, but still accepting the reality that the ale is being placed. But we're adding the fact that we don't know why the bartender gave us a second one. This puts the onus on the DM now, but it opens a great possible path here. I didn't order a second drink. You didn't. It's from that gentleman over there. And when you look over, you see a man wave. He's sitting alone at a table, and he has a feast before him. But notably, as stated in the advertisement for Help Wanted, he's wearing a blue flower in his breast pocket. With this example, I wanted to illustrate that a no or negative when you're speaking in character isn't always a problem. In fact, sometimes you open up an opportunity. The key difference lies in whether or not we're destroying or rewriting a reality that's been stated. Simply stating in character character that we didn't order the drink, in light of what's happened so far, is okay here. In fact, imagine that both of these scenarios came from one intention, where the DM had the idea of using this drink to point you towards the quest giver, hoping that you would ask where it came from. Saying that your character didn't order the drink allowed us to get to what the DM wanted us to get to quicker. Now, of course, here's the hard part. Yes and in one scenario is not the same as another. Different players and different DMs are going to be ready for and wanting different things. In one scenario, they might just want us to go for the drink. In another, they might have wanted us to question. How do you ascertain what they want? Simply put, you make a decision to the best of your ability and see how they react. Your DM will respond to your move, providing a clear signal as to whether your move was what they expected or not. For example, I didn't order a second drink. Oh, you did a minute ago. Did you forget? This would be a pretty clear indication that they didn't like my reaction. They're trying to stick with their idea and pushing that agenda. Or, I didn't order a second drink. Oh, you're right. Someone left abruptly before I got them their drink. So, this one's on the house. This would be a quick adaptation, where they didn't expect my reaction, but they were willing to shift to justify the drink. In either of these cases, I'm still making notes, noticing how they present a scenario, and then how they reacted, so I know exactly how to best play with this DM in the future. Now, I don't expect you to collect information and adapt so quickly on the fly to your DM and the players around you. It might take some time, some reflection after the games, but it's something you can aim for. Consider it advanced yes and. Finally, I want to talk about the clear distinction of game yes and character yes and, because we can always have a difference in opinion in character, which leaves doors open to not block or contradict reality, but a difference in fact of the game is where we can destroy the world or possible scenarios. For example, say our character finds clues that suggest that our character's brother was here and may be the culprit behind the crime. If I were to say in character, Fred shakes his head, incredulous. There's no way. My brother would never do that. This is a matter of opinion. The fact may or may not line up with this, leaving the door open for the DM to do what they will with this situation. Now let's go to the problem scenario with a difference in fact. No, my character's brother would never do that. It couldn't be him. That's not what I had in the backstory, even though there's some similarities. Us disagreeing and establishing that the character's brother could never do it, as a matter of reality and fact, creates a possible contradiction with meta information that limits the DM. Now there is a time and place for those limits, but assuming we don't have any special rules to protect this character's brother or the backstory we had in mind, then we want to stick with utilizing character opinion more than an out of character fact. Now I can go on and on and on about yes and, but I think that's a pretty solid start for players to work with and contemplate for future games and possible scenarios. So if this was helpful to you, please leave a like, subscribe, it really helps me out. If anything needs more clarification, please let me know in the comments, and I would love to make another video to elaborate. But until next time, stay safe and take care.